and welcome back to Tutor the Academy Tutorials. Today we will be covering valence electrons, and this is a continuation of our atomic structure series. So first, what are valence electrons? So remember when we were discussing in the last video the atomic structure and then the electron configuration. So in the nucleus, we have the neutrons and the protons, remember? And then on the outside, we have these different subshells. And then these subshells is where our electrons are located, okay? Now, these electrons that are located on the outermost shell are called valence electrons, all right? So get that in your head, you guys, that valence electrons are the electrons that are located on the outermost shell. So one good thing is that the valence electrons are the same for all the atoms in the groups, right? So for example, group 7 is our halogens, right? That's gonna be our fluorine, our chlorine, bromine, so on and so forth. They're in group 7, so they're gonna have 7 valence electrons. Group 1 element, they're all going to have 1 valence electron. Group 4, they're gonna have 4 valence electrons. And typically we use carbon that comes from this group. So do you guys kind of see a pattern, right? So if we look at this periodic table here, I'm gonna zoom in on this, you'll see that group 1, these all have 1 valence electron. Group 2, these all have 2 valence electrons. We skip the transition metals with this trend and we hop on over to where boron is. So this will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because we know in order to be completely happy, right, you have to have 8 valence electrons. This is why you never see the noble gases bonding with anything. However, when you look here, that's why fluorine, chlorine, bromine, they only need to form 1 more bond to gain 8. Oxygen 2, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that makes sense. It will make more sense when we go over Lewis structures and how to build those structures, and then talking about covalent bonding. But don't worry, we will get there. I'm sure I think that's next week actually. All right, so why are valence electrons so important? Why are valence electrons so important? Well, they're useful when drawing Lewis dot structures for atoms and molecules, just like I mentioned. So this is kind of me giving you guys a preview of what valence electrons are, so you know what they are, so we could go ahead and go with this level of understanding when we decide to start doing the Lewis dot structures and representing different covalent bonding in different molecules. It's also useful in determining how many electrons belong to an atom in covalent bonding. So for example, if we're looking at CH4, which is methane, right? If we're looking at CH4, well, we know that carbon has 4 valence electrons. Hydrogen's in group 1, guys, so how many is it gonna have? 1, but we have 4 of those, right? So how we draw that is, let's put carbon in the middle. And we're gonna draw its 4 valence electrons around it. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There has to be an even distribution, so it has to go all the way around, right? So hydrogen, that's 1 hydrogen. Put it here. That's 2 hydrogens. That's 3 hydrogens. And then that's 4 hydrogens. So do you see how, if we were to take the black marker and bond, that does not look right, guys. So I'm gonna draw it over here. It pretty much ends up looking like this. I just didn't have enough space. But do you guys see how we can use the valence electrons to determine how many electrons are shared between this bond? We know that there's 2 electrons in a sigma bond. A single bond is the same thing as a sigma bond. So one of those electrons are going with carbon, another one's going with hydrogen, and so on and so forth. And this is like one of the easiest ways I've taught children for years, or students for years, on how to draw Lewis dot structures and to represent covalent bonding. But we'll get into that next week. Now let's stay in the little portion about valence electrons. So let's just do a quick example together. What are the number of valence electrons for the following atoms? So for the helium atom, how many valence electrons is that one gonna have? Well, it's in group 8. Group 8, remember, the group relates to how many valence electrons there are. So that's going to be 8. Sodium is in what group? Group 1. So it's going to have 1 valence electron. Oxygen is in group 6. So it's going to have 6 valence electrons. Carbon is in group 4. So it's going to have 4 valence electrons. And fluorine is in group 7. So it's going to have 7 valence electrons. So hopefully this shortcut that we provided you with will kind of help you understand a little bit more easily what your professors or your high school teachers are teaching you about general chemistry in regards to valence electrons. However, if you guys are looking to book an individual session with us, don't forget to visit us at www.tutortheacademy.com.